The headlines, the stories, the news.
Oops.
In-depth
We'll switch
analysis
it
of
up.
national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Studio. And a good morning to you once more, Lagos. You're tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. It is a 30 minutes gone past 7, which means it's time to delve into national newspaper stories inside Freshly Pressed. Valentine and myself are here in the studio as usual. Thank you, Val. And we've got fantastic analysts in for you this morning. Funmi Odude is in. Good morning.
Good morning, Folu.
And we have Ugo Dre of Nairametrics in as well. Good morning.
Morning, madam.
Fantastic. Great to have you here. You can find them both online on social media at Ugo Dre, at Funmi Odude. Very straightforward, very simple. And as we delve into today's stories, please join us in the conversation. Send in your comments to us on our WhatsApp number, which is 0809 444. At us, just make sure you have Freshly Pressed 981 comments on our YouTube live stream. We're live right now, and we will tweet the link and the handle to you in just a bit. But now, for today's newspaper conversations.
We'll start with Punch today. The headline reads 1.64 billion naira fraud. Ex-Taraba Governor Nyame jailed for 14 years. This is one of the first, I would say the first sort of news that we've ever seen of its kind.
It's big news. It's big news, guys. We can say it. We can be a little bit giddy.
Yes. And for all the days for Miss Ritina to be here, after she has slammed my people for so long.
So for me, we'll take on the story together. I mean, the judgment lasted 4 hours, from 9:51 a.m. to about 2:05 p.m. Justice Adebukola Banjoko of the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory in Gudu, Abuja, yesterday sentenced the former governor of Taraba State, Jolly Nyame, to 14 years imprisonment for his acts on criminal breach of trust and misappropriation of the fund of the sum of 1.64 billion naira belonging to the state. While she was delivering this judgment, her facial expressions slid from mere smiles to even subdued laughter. It's like she enjoyed herself through the process.
Through the entire process, and then she got upset during the sentencing. But can I first of all say that whoever wrote this for Punch are in the wrong line of profession? Like, I hope you're writing a novel.
Yes.
Because
Like a
It was
screenplay.
well-detailed.
it was extremely well detailed, and you almost felt like you were in the courtroom yourself. And it got to a point where it was like, when he was talking about Nyame himself, it was like light complexion, tall and well built. The convict was dressed in a dark brown
Captain with a captain mask.
So that you can, so you can really picture it. You can
He was
see
so
it.
excited that he described the entire day, the atmosphere, everything.
That's how to write.
It is. See
Yes.
how excited we're getting about the story?
Wow.
It was
So
interesting.
yes, so there are two parts about the story that is exciting. First is the conviction itself, and second is the sentencing. I mean, it's not the first conviction we've had of public officials, but it always seemed like they had light sentences.
Yes.
So an 11 years trial brought to an end.
With no option of fine.
We know, as in that it's the sentencing that gets people the most. She gave him the maximum sentence
Provided by law.
Provided by the law. Most of the time, we've had judges take discretion and come really, really low. But she gave him the maximum for each. To show you that because the sentences are to run concurrently, that means that all of them run together. 14 years for what? For one crime, not for not for the
And he was
combination.
convicted of 27 out of the
It was
41
convicted
counts.
of 27 out of it. And I want to note the things that she said during the sentencing that a few things she said. She said she was morally outraged by the facts of the case, describing the conduct of the defendant as irreverent, a Christian. What really made her upset was, of course, when you look at some of the facts of the case, some of the things that she said the FCC was able to prove, repeatedly giving money to a particular company for stationery every month, like 250 million. 345
What?
million.
I'm telling you.
That's how much
Yeah.
Stationary. Without them even providing
In fact, the one that
Bible.
even annoyed the judge the most was the one he
He said
contracted
it was-
on the 30th of December.
He was supposed to leave office May 2017.
Yes.
He spent over 100 million to host the president April 2017. Like, she just mentioned a few things that she said was so upsetting to her. Like, you breached the trust. of
Actually,
Taraba
April
State
2005.
people. Sorry, 2005.
Yeah.
So all those things. And then she said he gave room for his aides. I mean, she mentioned the fact that she's surprised that a lot of his aides have not been charged by EFCC, but his aides could still openly, and he absolutely did nothing about
Yeah.
it. So all
There was no inquiry,
all the
no trial,
pleas for
nothing.
mercy made that he's a first-time offender, he's a family man.
Wow.
He selflessly gave himself for the people of Taraba State. She just ignored all of that completely. And then she said he repeatedly kept doing it, that even while EFCC was investigating before they charged him to court, he still sanctioned some payments for stationery. So it was completely unrepentant.
And apparently he served in 3 terms. He was first voted in as governor in 1991, again 1999, and then in 2007.
So real criminal.
He's a real jolly guy.
What?
That's his name.
That's like an abuse of trust.
and any commentary on some of the side facts that we noted? He did seem to appear calm throughout all of this.
Yes,
No
because,
nothing.
well, he has to put up the
He's a
facade.
reverend, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it. But I see him going on appeal. I see him trying to apply for bail pending appeal and all of that. So maybe that's
We'll see how this plays out.
I just hope no president comes in later and tries to grant this
Give
guy a
him-
pardon.
Excuse what?
I'm telling you.
No, let's reject
It's
it.
a,
Nigeria.
it's a valid fear, but the thing
Yeah.
about it is, it actually just gives us more hope and confidence in the judiciary system in Nigeria to see that such cases will come to an end.
I think it's a
Oh,
major
it's
victory
easy.
for this government.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
The fight against corruption. All right, we'll move on to the next story from this day. Fayemi resigns from Buhari's cabinet, hands over to his deputy. Yet another surprise in the news today. Now, the resignation. Now, he's the minister who was the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Dr. Kaide Fayemi. Yesterday, formally resigned from President Muhammadu Buhari's cabinet as Minister of Mines and Steel Development, handed over to his deputy, and said the resignation was approved on the 30th of May 2018. In his tenure, they recorded in 2016 alone 7% increase in GDP. What's your take on this, Igor?
Yeah, this was much expected. I mean, it wasn't a surprise to me. What was surprise to me really is why Fayemi is going back to context for governorship. I mean, I don't know what he left first all the time that he thinks he can finish.
Well,
after-
Nyame was in there for quite a while, so I'm just
Does
Does he
saying.
want to go and jolly there as well?
Hey,
Yeah,
hey,
it's his turn,
you
I'm sure.
asked. I'm pointing.
I really don't know. I mean, I like the guy personally, but quite frankly, I think that if I'm to score him in his time as Minister of Mines, Power and Steel, I think I'll score him quite low. Some of the numbers that he ringed here are actually very paltry numbers, and this is what you call alternative facts. I mean, he left the mines, power, and steel as a percentage of GDP. If you remove crude oil, petroleum, it's less than 1%, right? So he was basically in charge of less than 1% of the economy, and he did nothing there, right? And the so-called GDP growth rate that he recorded was just, towards the latter part of last year, and it was, of course, I mean, nearly every sector was, most sectors, turned back into positive territory. So, but between 2016 and early 2017, it was all negative GDP growth rate. So, in terms of performance, I don't think he's performed well. I don't know what Ekiti State people have in mind in terms of voting. Maybe they might vote him in. Maybe I don't know who the whether PDP has been able to agree to come up with someone. But in his first time as a state governor, I mean, from the people that I know who tell me, I think he got a bit of a pass mark. He was trying to do a lot of reforms, but I think he didn't. Some of his reforms weren't communicated properly to the people of Ekiti State.
Yeah.
So they sort of felt like he was stingy. And I think he went against teachers. I think he's learned a lot of lessons now. So I guess now that he's going back, he's probably trying to
come
finish
back a
up.
bit better.
Yeah. But I just hope that that he's going back to Ekiti State. It's a positive development for Ekiti. Not that you're going back to pave way for somebody else to come for another 8 years, right? Because I really don't know what you want to achieve in 4 years. I mean, you've seen the other chap. All he was doing in the last 4 years was just bashing,
The government.
the government. Yeah, and really did nothing for the people of Ekiti State. And Ekiti State, by the way, has one of the most. That's the state with some of the most educated people in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad what's going on there.
Interesting. So the strike that has been lasting lasted 44 days, it seems to have come to an end. We don't know if it's because of the threat or maybe they've reached an agreement finally. Now, in consideration of the plight of patients and to give room for an amicable resolution of the dispute with the federal government, the striking health sector workers under the aegis of the Joint Health Sector Unions, JOHESU, yesterday decided to call off their strike. And it's effective tomorrow, and they've handed over negotiations to the industrial courts, National Industrial Court, to really take over that. Funmi, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so JOHESU decided to suspend the strike to give it's like a sign of good faith.
Yes.
The National Industrial Court has said would intervene by mediating. Most courts now have a mediation center, so let's try and see if we can reach a form of settlement between you and the government. And since, like the vice president of JOHESU said, since it's an organ of the judiciary that is involved, an impartial party, it feels like, okay, let's give it a try. Let's suspend the strike. Let's see how far the National Industrial Court can go in solving this issue. But ultimately, I'm a bit worried because the problem, what is causing the ongoing strike now is the failure of the government to enforce terms of agreements previously reached. That's always the problem. It's not like they would not reach an agreement eventually. They always do. But are we going to be back here in a few months' time when the government fails to reach the terms of its own agreements? That is the issue.
Yeah.
That is always the issue.
But is there any other way out anyway, aside strikes? I mean, like, because strikes.
That's actually now the major question, because it seems to be.
I think it does require more creative thinking. The strike is almost the easiest default option to go to. So
It gets bored
if
over
we
time.
really want solutions, we as a community need to figure out how to get there. So perhaps they should start engaging the general public a little bit more directly.
And before doing that, they engage their leaders as well, because there's a lot of accountability issues.
Within these unions. Yeah, absolutely. We've got messages coming in up on WhatsApp. Jerry sends in this one. He says, but we know that this is not the end of the case for the ex-Taraba governor. He will most likely appeal, then spend another 7 years in the appeal court. And depending on the outcome, he can proceed to the Supreme Court. Guess how many years he'll be walking around free. Interesting. Well, we're going to just keep an eye on that, see how that goes. MI from Akoka says, wow, 14 years for ex-governor in Nigeria. We are used to them getting something light. Like my uncle Donna will say, this is huge. Big league. Justice system deserves some accolades. Chai, indeed. This in from Tunde also applying a caution. He says it's not yet Uhuru, and I'm actually not that impressed because either the appeal court or the Supreme Court will soon set convict Reverend Jolly Nyame free. Have we forgotten the Adamawa guy so soon? No, we haven't, but let's maintain a little bit of optimism.
Exactly.
This is also a much more severe sentence than the Adamawa guy got the first time, so we'll keep an eye on that, shall we?
Looking at the justice system and seeing how our hopes could be raised higher, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN Justice Walter Onnoghen, yesterday identified delays experienced in the trial of court cases as a form of discouragement to investors in the country. He said this when he was presenting a paper at the seminar for judges on construction law, and said the judiciary asked the judiciary to, in addressing the situation, directed courts in the country really to embrace the AR, which is the alternative dispute resolution, and said that's going to be used as a yardstick for quarterly evaluation exercises. For me, how do we really, how does this apply to making sure that the justice system is reformed eventually?
Well, for a while now, we've used the mechanism of ADR to try and reduce the caseload in court.
Okay, and by ADR for our general public?
Alternative dispute resolution. So, if your clauses have arbitration, have an arbitration. If your contracts have an arbitration clause, send you to arbitration, mediation exercises, and all of that. And almost every court now has a mediation center, like I mentioned before. So if it's contractual in nature and they feel like the parties can actually they'll send you to the mediation center to see if you guys can reach an amicable settlement. Yes, it's a good mechanism, but it's obviously not enough. We still have a whole backlog of cases, and the problems. Everybody has identified the problem. I mean,
Yes.
The committee set up by the federal government to check anti-corruption cases has gone round. Has said the same thing everybody has been saying for a while. Court infrastructure, number of judges, some of our rules and laws. For example, every person that has hailed the Taraba State Governor's judgment has talked about the ACJ, the 2015 Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that prevented stay of proceedings.
Yes.
And so criminal cases are now going a whole lot faster.
Faster.
So it's all those things. The ADR mechanism is very helpful. It will be very helpful, but it is not enough. We still have to deal with court infrastructure.
You need money in the judiciary.
Exactly.
That's
We
what
still
you
have
need.
to
You need to fund that arm
we
of
still have
government.
to increase the number of judges. All those things still have to happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you
that.
for me.
Thank you. All right, we've got more stories to get into. Up next, let's talk about World Tobacco Day, or World No Tobacco Day, as it might be. The WHO has been urging countries to raise taxes. So Ugo Dre will talk about this briefly. Again, what a day for Mr. Racy. Had a lot of things to say about this, because we had heard our government before this announcement had said they would be raising taxes, and we sort of questioned why that could happen. I'd suggested, humbly, that perhaps they're trying to keep down number of smokers, but we are seeing that the WHO on Wednesday did say, there should be a comprehensive ban somewhat on tobacco advertising, promotion, sponsorship, monitoring the use, just increasing the taxes to make the products themselves less affordable. Your thoughts?
A mixed bag here, though. So tobacco is usually a punching bag. I mean, everybody knows. And then you punch tobacco so hard, and you forget that the real damage really is from codeine, all these other substances that people take these days. But I mean, we got to reduce the way we smoke in this country. From what I gather, I think there are about 21 billion sticks of cigarette manufactured in Nigeria yearly. I mean, 21 billion sticks. That's how much we smoke around here. And I think that's from the major cigarette producing company in Nigeria. I won't name names.
But we form no smoking up and down the
how can you say we form no smoking?
Exactly.
I mean, you actually have anti-smoking laws in Lagos where you actually can't smoke in public places, right? In
However,
clubs, restaurants, but
the
go
reality,
to any club or restaurant or bar in Nigeria and everybody is smoking.
Lagos, how many times have you been accused of smoking
You
when you
smoke.
walk out of such places?
Oh,
Exactly. In fact, you can't even tell them, Oga, don't smoke
you
here.
even see them
It's
in
you they will
Lagos
send out,
traffic.
right? Right. You know how many, but you go abroad, you can't try that, right? If you want to smoke, you have to go out of the corner and smoke. I think it's probably only in hotels and
Where you
that's
have
top
no
hotels in
smoking
Lagos where you
areas,
have no smoking. But any other place in Nigeria, you can actually smoke and get away with it.
It's problematic.
And the tax actually kicks in. So WHO, we don't need to tell us. The government has already imposed taxes. I think it starts June 4th. That's on Monday. Right, so that's when the alcohol and tobacco tax will kick in.
Ooh.
So this you have between now and Sunday to drink all
We do not advise that. We do not advise
Things
that.
are making it more expensive. We actually reduce the number of consumers.
Yeah, I think there was a data I saw sometime, not necessarily Nigerian data, but I think higher taxes has actually reduced tobacco consumption and even alcohol consumption. So, but what it does is that demand just and taste changes, so people just now go for more value substances, right? So, and because at the end of the day, it's nicotine that you're after or something that can get you really addicted or high, so they just move down to something else that is cheaper. And then of the one that when they put in the bottle now that those women carry.
All right, let's swerve away from that conversation of where it's headed now, and talk about this. The Senate has brought this story back into the papers from the Premium Times. The Nigerian Senate investigates OAU sex for mark scandal. Please do remember that you can send us your messages both up on our YouTube live stream and of course by using the hashtag freshlypressed981 and sending messages to our WhatsApp number.
It's 0809 444 981.
So this we have that on Wednesday, the Nigerian Senate actually resolved to probe the sex for marks case at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. We're talking about a motion that was brought by Biodun Olujimi, and he harped on the need to investigate the case and in relation to that, the growing culture of sexual harassment, he said, in Nigerian institutions. That's Mrs. Olujimi. So going over to you, Ugo Dre, what's your take on this? We had some interesting reps from the Senate yesterday, and it would be great to have got their opinion on things like this as well. But your thoughts?
I mean, you would expect the highest level of lawmaking in Nigeria to actually get involved in scandals like this. That shows how serious a country takes sexual harassment. I just hope that they don't turn it into a charade, right? And try to maybe put some of the people who actually the actual victims here and turn them into scapegoats. But there's a bill currently, the Senate bill on sexual harassment in tertiary educational institutions.
Yes.
Now, why they restrict to tertiary education institutions, what I'm not sure of. I do know that there's sexual harassment even in the entertainment industry, probably even among the workplaces, fashion industry, even in regular private sector. It's pervasive. And having a bill restricted to just higher institutions, I don't think cuts it for me. It has to be widespread.
You see that's what makes it very interesting, kind of this article, because while they are addressing the issue, first of all, it's coming almost a month after I think this kicked off, or at least the investigation from the university itself was happening.
Yeah.
We have been seeing, as they markedly they note in this story as well, lots of stories coming out in the paper, but then they say that this is a recent trend. Do you think this is a recent trend,
it's
or
not a
something
recent
else?
trend? My God,
Thank
it's
you.
been there
It's been
since. I mean, like when I was in
existing
university,
since the 80s.
it's been existing. It's been there, right? It's either for marks or for whatever. So they basically just blackmail young women, and it's been there
And
forever.
men, and
yeah,
men.
and a lot of these guys have gotten away with it in the 80s and 90s are probably high up, probably in the highest echelon of politics or society in Nigeria, and they're there. We know them, but I mean, a lot of these people probably can't speak up now, but there are a lot of them, and it's been going on for years, for decades.
And any thoughts on why you think the lawmakers rejected the prayer to invite the OAU authorities to explain the steps they've taken so far? They just said, it'll be handled by the committees.
Yeah, I think they should allow the university to sort it out. What I probably won't condone is have the university, have this stretch for too long. They suspended him. I think that, between, it shouldn't take them, more than 3 months to conclude an investigation and probably, have that guy sacked. Right, but giving him an indefinite suspension, I don't think solves the problem. It's probably just kicking the can down the road, and we hope that 1 year or 2 years from now, when everybody probably must have forgotten, they're just going to come back and just slip the guy back in. So that's what we're worried about. But all well and good, I think they should just allow the university to sort this out. OAU is a big enough university to sort this out themselves.
Yes, it is. Now, Big E sending this one on WhatsApp. It says, the sentence of the ex-governor is welcome. It's a welcome development, and as such, cases are few, and thrusts an ex-convicted governor to stop at the last bus stop of the Supreme Court. There's Saraki, Dasuki, Olisamitsu. Which Nigeria year will they get convicted? This is Nigeria. Shola says, ha ha ha, Idris sang about it, Mr. Lecturer. Thank you very much. Keep it moving.
Indeed.
Yeah, he did actually.
He did. He was ahead of his time. They persecuted him for it. Vanguard newspaper next. The South governors adopt Wike's demand for $1 billion security fund. For me, it looks like they're asking for their pound of flesh, essentially. They are saying, well, we will communicate to the appropriate authorities that whatever amount is to be withdrawn from the excess crude account, being proceeds of crude oil sale, is subject to 13% principle enshrined in the Constitution. Over to you.
Okay, so actually, as silly as it sounds, it makes a very interesting point.
They dusted off their legal paperwork there.
Yeah.
Said, well,
They always make interesting points. They do.
It's actually an interesting legal point because the money that goes into the ECA is excess of the crude oil revenue from. So by the time they share the rest, they apply the 13% derivation formula to it. So why can't we, if you are going to now remove from the excess crude fund, we should be able to apply the same derivation formula to it. It is an interesting point, but the issue would always be this ECA, I'm surprised we're still running it alongside with the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Yeah.
It boggles me why we're doing that.
I think it's a convenient illegality.
It is very convenient. Very convenient.
I like that turn of phrase.
Yes, it is. And they are bound to put more money there because the Sovereign Wealth Fund is very well regulated. It has an agency. It's structured very well structured in law. But because this has no laws, it's left to the whims and caprices of the chief executive. And so we can decide all of a sudden that we need it for security fund. We can decide which is.
I mean, so here's an angle to it that I was looking at. No problem. This is enshrined in law. You're entitled to this percentage. No worries. As a concerned citizen of the South, for example, what are you going to use? How are you going to put this towards security? Should indigents not be asking this question, because it feels as though these questions are not being asked? We just spoke about security votes being used as a slush fund. We've just spoken about all of these things. So you want to take more money? No problem. How are you using this money?
How do you break it down?
And that is the issue, because they now look like the first step that the governors took was to completely fight against it, was to completely oppose it. So they've now come from, and if you're going to take it anyway, we might as well share it.
Yes, because it was first hold up.
It was first hold up. How do you take this without? It's supposed to be our joint money, federal and state. They're supposed to jointly agree when you're going to withdraw from the account. But it looks like they feel like, okay, we are going to lose that.
Let's not leave everything for the president.
Let's just take
Election
our,
is coming.
Take our 30%, and then the rest of the states
move
can
on.
go.
Thank you very much, guys. Up next, let's talk about this story. The federal government intensifies Ebola screening at Lagos Airport. You can find it in ThisDay newspaper. What is very interesting about this story is that they tell us they're doing it without our knowledge. Oh, you don't know? We're sophisticated now. They say we've moved on from the infrared screening. We're now using thermal screening, which doesn't require you to know almost when you're being screened. Now, I imagine that this is similar to what they have in a number of other airports around Africa. I believe South Africa has got this. But you do see the thermal image facing you, because they make you stand still. So
maybe they probably implemented that yesterday, because I traveled and came back on Saturday, and there's this woman who's just, as you're, that little tunnel,
yes.
as you're coming in, the lady's just there with that thing right in front of you, infrared, and you have to bring your head, and she just goes there back and she presses, and then you pass. So maybe they just introduced this one yesterday, because it wasn't there over the weekend, and I was actually happy that at least we've started screening people from entry point.
Yes.
I think that we need to be a bit more secure on land, sea, air borders. We can't allow that what happened a few years ago to happen again in Nigeria. Nobody needs to sacrifice their lives for our carelessness. And I'm even a bit more petrified, because we all know this government, I don't know if they can actually handle any of such cases like it was done a few years ago. So I'm a little worried. With all this strike, JOHESU on the side.
Ugo Dre, you say this, but
please.
Airport's regional manager of Southwest, Mrs. Victoria Shino Abbas, says that they have run through including a mock exercise, preparedness for the outbreak. They say they're ready. But about 2 weeks ago, it was a successful exercise. Now, I mean, we can ask questions of who conducted this exercise, exactly what time was it conducted, but they say we're good. We're all in accordance to international civil aviation codes and World Health codes.
It's even worrying when they say we are ready. Is it that they're expecting it? Because now I'm getting worried.
Like,
I'm ready. We're ready.
Come. Show me what you got.
Please.
Well, they're just putting that out there. And finally, we can't escape this story, because I guess it does bear mentioning, but drama as Melaye resumes and opts to sit with PDP senators. So he raised a point of order to the Senate, the House of Representatives and their leadership, thanking them for defending him during his travails. He did show up with a cervical collar and a walking stick as well. He did also make a special request to sit on the other side. He says, I will call on the Sergeant of Arms to look for a comfortable seat for me on this side, pointing on the PDP roll of the divide, because I'm no longer comfortable sitting here. Kudos to the Senate President, who says, is it due to your injury or what? You cannot sit on this side. This seat, that is what I know you for. I'll take note of your request. I'll take note of your comments. Your thoughts?
Drama king is back.
The only thing that was missing in the story was music. I mean, I thought maybe there was
Actually.
some playing beside.
A little soundtrack.
Forgive me to say this, but I think that maybe this guy needs psychological help some way. I mean, except maybe he's just dramatizing. But if this is really him, like this is him.
Have you
then
had the
he
police try
probably
to kill you 2 times?
Before
Injections
that,
and-
I beg.
And did
You've seen all the
anybody
drama.
see the tweet
I mean,
from Ben Bruce the day before?
No, I
saying
didn't
they
see that.
miss him and Senate. He misses him. He makes the Senate feel lively. He should come
Yeah,
back.
yeah. So Senate is
On
it's-
that note, let's round up with messages that have come through. Big T says, tobacco, let's not joke over it. It's a real serious issue. Have you seen the effects of tobacco on the lungs? Yes, we have. He says, all right, thank you very much for that, Big T. It's a very inspirational story you've shared there. While Wayme from Ikeja says, there should be more done to enforce the ban on smoking in public. People with respiratory issues such as asthma bear the major brunt of secondhand smoking, indeed. While Tosin Baba says, only if the Senate could pass a harassment bill not limited to tertiary education, then we can actually take these cases to the courts if organizations do not act responsibly. While Henry Manuel says the money in the ECA is already subjected to the 13% derivation.
Thank you.
Ugo, find Ugo Dre at Ugo Dre.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next in about 15 minutes, we will be talking grapevine on Smooth Breakfast, and there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. Stay with us.
The headlines.
Yeah.
The story.
How many times that you have